Hi, I'm Scott Allen from the SustainRecruit Accounting and Finance team, and I'm here today with Machin, the CFO of Schneider Electric's Pacific Zone, to share some top tips for you in preparation for your next interview. Hi Claire, how are you?
I'm great, thank you, Scott.
It's all right. Obviously we know each other very well, but for those who don't know you, could you tell us a little bit about yourself and your experience?
Yeah, sure. So I started my career at Ford Motor Company back in the UK as an apprentice, working through each of the different disciplines in finance. I then joined Schneider 19 years ago in the UK and have done pretty much every role in finance, from business partnering, M&A, tax, treasury, you name it, I've done it. I then moved with Schneider to Sydney 3 years ago as finance director, looking after our transactional business as the business partner. And then I took over CFO 18 months ago, looking after Australia and New Zealand, the whole of the finance team, including some teams who work offshore in India and the Philippines.
Fantastic. As a CFO, Claire has interviewed a lot of candidates throughout her career, and today we're going to talk about what candidates are doing well, what candidates aren't doing well, as well as some other top tips to set yourself up for success in your next interview. So what are candidates doing well when it comes to interviews?
The best candidates I've seen recently are coming really prepared with what does Schneider do, what are the values, and what do they really want to bring to the role. The other thing that's really important is that the candidate really understands the job description and make sure that they can answer questions around how they are going to fulfill the role and be the best candidate for that job.
Okay. Now on the flip side of that, what aren't candidates doing well?
So recently we've seen some candidates who've come and not been able to express why they could take on the role. So they're not answering the questions in relation to the role that they're actually coming to interview for. They're quite generic, so it's making the answers very specific to the role. The other thing is that some candidates are still very nervous in interviews, so we don't get to really see the real candidate. They can be a little bit robotic, and that's something that I really look for as CFO, is making sure the candidate's really going to fit into the culture. So it's really about making sure that they come as themselves.
What are some key skills that candidates aren't taught that CFOs want to see candidates demonstrate in an interview?
So there's some key skills that you never get taught at university. One of those is really being around being agile. So in business, things come up every day that are outside of your normal working pattern, and you have to be agile and just address those as they come up. The second one is having a real inquisitive mindset. So really asking lots of questions as to why, really get into the nuts and bolts of the problem, and then you can explain to the business why we should take a certain course of action. So it's really coming with an open mindset and not being fixed on what should or shouldn't be done.
Fantastic. And technology's had a huge impact in recent years on accounting and finance team. How do you see that continual change in technology impacting finance teams in the coming years?
So we've seen a lot of transformation already in terms of technology in finance. So a lot of things are being automated now, a lot more artificial intelligence, things reading invoices automatically. What we'll see is more and more of that, so much more automation. And what that means for the finance team is less doing processes and much more analysing things, really getting into the data sets and being able to be a real trusted advisor back to the business to explain what's happening. So from a finance viewpoint, for me, it's great because it's less of the kind of traditional kind of repetitive work and much more into the analytics and really adding the value back to the business.
What are the 3 key pieces of advice you would give a candidate when preparing for an interview with a CFO?
So it's really around being prepared, and that is being prepared on the business, so really understanding what is the business that you're going for an interview with, understand what they do, understand what their mission is, and try and look at their 5-year plan if it's available. The second one is understanding who is interviewing you, and that's where a recruiter can be really valuable, making sure you understand what is the role that that person does and what are they looking for from this particular candidate. And the third one is really, as I mentioned before, just be yourself. So don't over-prepare lots of answers. Be fluid in the meeting and answer the questions as they come up. It gives a much better insight for a CFO to see who you are, and also make sure that you're asking questions of the company as well, because it's a two-way interview. It's not just us interviewing the candidate's also interviewing us to make sure that the company is the right fit for them.
You mentioned working with the recruiters before. What are the key tips you'd have for candidates in terms of supporting or working with a recruiter?
So for me, the recruiter brings a lot of value because they know the business, they know the candidates, and they also know the interviewer. So they can really give the candidate a lot more insight and really prepare them and help them prepare for the interview, doing some interview techniques, making sure that you're answering the questions with the right level of detail. But also it's around giving feedback, and that's so important for the candidates. If they're not successful in a role, they need to understand why so that they can prepare for the next role.
We've worked on a lot of roles together over the last couple of years. What's been your experience with SustainRecruit?
It's been really good. So I think the value that you and your team bring to me is that you know me very well, you know the business very well. So every time that you put a candidate in front of me, I know that they are going to be a good candidate for the role. I think Sustain, because it's quite a small agency, can really get to know people very well on a personal level. So you know the candidates really well, you know my team really well now, so you can instantly match if the culture is going to fit between the team, and you can really challenge the candidates in terms of those key skills that I mentioned before about being agile, being inquisitive. You can make sure that they have those skills before they even get their CV gets to my desk. So for me, Sustain works really well because it's on a personal level and not just sending CVs out without really screening the candidates first. So that's the value that you bring for me.
Well, thank you very much, Claire. I really appreciate your time, as always. It's been fantastic to partner with you and the team this year, and obviously looking forward to what the future brings.
Yeah, thank you, Scott, and I'm really looking forward to 2024 and seeing some new candidates join the business.
Fantastic. Well, there you go. There's our top tips in hopefully what will be the first of a series of videos to give you a little bit more information to better prepare yourself for your next interview.